I was about to graduate from junior high, which, oh, geez, just thinking back about it, I mean, I would not go back for anything. That was the most awkward years of my life. But I was so excited to move forward. I was so excited to go on to high school. I was so excited. I'd always talk with my friend Laurie, and we'd talk about what clubs we wanted to join and what sports teams we wanted to watch and maybe try out for. We were so excited. She asked me if I wanted to go on a vacation to celebrate our graduating from junior high. And I thought that sounded like a brilliant idea. I was so excited. So I remember going home and begging my parents to let me go. I mean, really begging them. I think it took maybe 3 hours, and finally they're like, okay, not another word, Elizabeth, and you can go. So I said, okay. And I was so excited, I was just practically prancing out of their room. My older brother was waiting for me, and his name is Charles. And as I skipped out of my parents' room, he said, "Now, Elizabeth, geez, did I hear you correctly? Did you say you're going on vacation to Beaver, Utah? Is that where you said you're going?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm so excited, I can't wait." He said, "Well, you know, I've been thinking about this, and I've come to a bit of a problem. What do you think you're going to be doing in Beaver, Utah?" And so I sat there and I thought about it. And I turned to him and I said, "Well, I guess I don't know what we're going to be doing there." He said, "Well, do you want me to tell you?" So I said, "Okay, tell me." He said, "Well, you don't know what you're going to be doing in Beaver, Utah. First of all, because you're going there with Laurie Angel. Second of all, because you're being chaperoned by her grandparents. And thirdly of all, probably which is most importantly of all, is it's Beaver, Utah. There's nothing to do there." Which would probably explain why most of you have probably never heard of Beaver, Utah before. Anyways, I was not about to let him rain on my parade and ruin my joy at going on this vacation with my best friend. So I turned around and I went off to my room, and he called out after me, he said, "Elizabeth, are you serious? Are you seriously going to Beaver, Utah? Honestly, I can't believe you." And I looked at him and I said, "Charles, you're just jealous. And what if those were the last words you ever said to me?" And he looked at me and he just kind of smiled at me the way only big brothers can. And then he turned around and went to his bedroom, and I went to my bedroom that I shared with my younger sister, and I fell asleep. And the next voice that I heard couldn't have been any more different from my brother's voice than what it was. I remember when I first heard it, I mean, I understood it, it was English, but I just couldn't believe it. It had to be in my dream, it had to be a nightmare, maybe some crazy imagination I had in my brain. It couldn't really be real. And then I heard the voice again, and this time I realized that it was not part of my dream. I realized that it wasn't just my imagination working on me. I realized that it was very real. I had heard the words, "I have a knife at your neck. Don't make a sound. Get up and come with me." And as I had laid there, I had felt the knife line across my neck. I could feel its edge on the tip of my skin. And I realized that this was very real. I realized that my nightmare, worse than my nightmare, had ever come to life. I mean, up until that point in my life, my biggest nightmare had been, well, I would have to say, that monster wolf from The Never-Ending Story. He had been my biggest nightmare up until that point. But it quickly changed. I didn't know if this man had gone through my house already. Surely if he had gotten all the way upstairs to my bedroom, he must have killed someone or some of my family members surely must have been hurt. But I did know that my younger sister was still alive and that she was in bed next to me. And I didn't want to even begin to imagine what would happen to her if I didn't go with this man. So I immediately got up and I did exactly everything that he said. I remember him taking me out through my house, up through my backyard, and we had crossed the street and we started up this trailhead. And there comes a point where the trail starts to wrap around the front of the mountains and stays on the inside of the valley. And right as about this trail was about to wrap around and come out on the face of the mountain again, this man stopped and he pushed me to start heading up a small, narrow ravine. And it was so small and so tight that we literally had to get on our hands and knees and crawl up this ravine. And I remember getting farther and farther away from my home. And I remember we kept going what felt like forever. We'd gone so far, we'd crossed right over the top of the mountain and we were starting down the other side. And we were still quite close to the top, but far enough down that anyone maybe running a ridge line would be unlikely to hear or see anything. And we came to a grove of trees and we entered the grove, and from the outside, it'd be no different than any other grove of trees. But once we got into it, I saw how this man had leveled out a piece of ground on the mountainside. There he'd set up a tent outside of which there were tarps lying on the ground, and there were tarps up hanging in the trees. And out of this tented area walked a woman. She didn't look like any woman I'd ever seen before. She had on these long linen robes, and she had on a long linen headdress, long gray hair, no makeup. I didn't know her. I'd never seen her before. And she came up to me, and she gave me a hug. And I just couldn't understand why all of this was happening. I couldn't understand why on earth I was there. And so to try to make sense of it all, I had to think, okay, he must have kidnapped me because I must be the daughter they always wanted but could never have. That must be why they kidnapped me. And I remember I was sitting there crying, and the tent door unzipped again, and in walked this man. And he'd changed out of the clothes he'd kidnapped me, and he'd changed out of all of his dark clothing, and he'd put on a robe that was just like mine, just like the woman's. And he had started to say something, but I hadn't quite pulled myself together enough to hear what he said. But finally, I was able to gain enough composure to listen to what he had to say. And he said, I heard him say, I hereby seal you to me as my wife, before God and his angels as my witnesses. All I could do was scream out, no. Nothing had ever repulsed me so much in my entire life. And this man, he stopped and he looked at me and he said, if you ever scream out like that again, I will kill you. If it'll help you not scream out, I can duct tape your mouth shut. At that point, I wasn't ready to die yet, and I didn't want my mouth duct taped shut, so I told him I wouldn't scream out again. I decided that no matter what it took, I would do it. No matter how long I had to wait, I would wait. I would do whatever it took. As long as it was within my power, I would survive. And that decision saw me through a lot. Saw me through 9 months of a lot. And I remember we were walking up State Street, which runs from one end of the valley all the way up to the other end where our state capitol building is located. And we were still quite a ways out on the far side of the valley. We were out on about 106 South. And we were walking along, and all of a sudden, a police car pulled up. And then another one, and another one, and another one, and pretty soon it felt like we were surrounded by police cars. It was 2, 3, 5 people who made a phone call on March 12th of 2003 within 5 minutes of each other, simply saying, I think I just saw Elizabeth Smart on State Street walking with 2 people. And they'd all jumped out and were surrounding us and asking us questions, and I'd always been told, you do not talk to anyone. If you have to answer a question, you give them the answer we tell you to give them, because if you do not, we will kill you. If we don't kill you, we will kill your family. And quite frankly, there couldn't be any better target than your family because, well, the world sees it as one tragedy has already happened to them. Who would ever think a second could possibly happen? So I never had done anything they didn't want me to do. I'd never said anything they didn't want me to say. I'd never answered them, anyone else, with anything other than the answers they'd told me to say. And that's what I did in that moment. And they kept questioning me. They kept questioning my captors. And finally, one of the officers said, I think we need to question this young girl by herself. So they separated me from my captors and they started asking me questions. And at first I gave them the answers I'd been told to give. And then finally, one officer just asked me, are you Elizabeth Smart? And the majority of me just wanted to scream out, yes, please, rescue me, take me away, save me. But there was a part of me that caused me to hesitate, because what if they didn't believe me? What if they gave me back to my captors? What would my captors do to me? What would they do to my family? I don't even want to think about it. But if I can tell you one thing about myself, is anytime I get into an argument with myself, the majority always wins. So I was able to tell them that I was Elizabeth Smart. Anyways, I remember finally reaching the police station, and I remember seeing my family again for the first time. I remember seeing my mom again for the first time. And if I ever had to describe what that felt like in one word, I would say heaven.